We realize some may just want to listen, and that's perfectly fine. But for those of you who would like to ask a question, we encourage you to press *3 on your phone. You will then be transferred to an operator who will take down some basic information. Once the operator notes your information, you'll be returned to the call and can listen to the conversation until you are called upon. So go ahead and press *3 now if you already know your question, and we'll follow the same process throughout the town hall tonight. If you hear something that generates a question, please press *3. And again, when it's your turn to ask the question, I'll call out your name and ask you to repeat the question for our live audience. So now I'd like to turn it over to Mayor Pat Quinn for introductions and some opening remarks. Mayor, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Roger. Let me start by saying, thanking the thanking the community, the Skyestone community, for your continuing engagement. We do listen. We do appreciate your comments, and we've gotten a whole series of comments on a variety of subjects that. So, Council Members Lindstedt and Tessier, who are your ward reps, are on the call tonight, and they had recommended, and we all agreed that that having a town hall where you could talk to everybody at one time, we could all do what was a productive thing to do. So that's the purpose of tonight. On tonight's call, we have the Mayor Pro Tem, Guylaine Castriato. As mentioned, we have your council members, William Lindstedt and council member Sharon Tessier. Unfortunately, City Manager Jennifer Hoffman has a son that is in the hospital right now and couldn't make it, and so our thoughts go out to her. But we do have with us Abby Yeoman, who is an assistant city manager, who has brought a lot of staff here. And just name a couple. We have some people from our planning staff, our engineering group, the roads, and the Chief Krieger, and not the least of which we also have Chief Ramos from the North Metro Fire Department. So we've anticipated questions, and we hopefully have the people assembled. If we don't have answers to your questions, we will get back to you. So we ask your specific questions. Like I said, well, if we need to research it, we will. For those questions that require input or fall under the responsibility of your homeowners association, we have board members and HOA management are on the line to field those questions, to provide follow-up opportunities. And so you're on the line. We've got 77 participants right now. If you want to speak or ask a question, don't forget to press *3. And I'll say that a couple times. You got to press *3, or you can't get in the queue to call a question. So before we get to the questions, we've had requests to provide a quick overview of the development process. And I'll just make a comment. I had a couple of people that approached me directly about where we're at with, in the development process for the development on 108th. And we thought it was best to have Anna from our planning department talk about what our planning process is and specifically where we're in the process on this project. Anna?
Thank you, Mayor, for the introduction. And thank you for the residents that have reached out and asked about our development review process. I think this is a great place for our meeting to start. And could we have the slide presentation for those of you watching on YouTube? Our development review process in Broomfield for most properties has 5 key steps. So I wanted to talk about those generally, and also where we are in the process for the South Point development. So most properties in Broomfield, the way that a development proposal starts is by a property owner reaching out to staff. Usually they already have a developer who is interested in the property, has done research, has pulled information that's available for the property, such as the zoning documents, our standards and specifications, and they're interested in learning more about how to develop their property in Broomfield. It is less common for Broomfield to have brought in a developer specific to a property, although we do have a very active economic development or economic vitality team that does do some of that. In the case of South Point, for example, a developer approaches Broomfield with a proposal, and they're usually reaching out to staff, and we start talking with them at what we call a pre-application stage. So this is a very informal meeting with staff where we learn a little bit about what they are interested in doing, and we share with them some of the things that we know about the property. For example, is the use allowed? What kind of process do they need to go through? What kind of things do we think that they need to be prepared to address, such as is height a concern? Traffic, noise is sometimes a concern for various uses. And so we'll point out things that we know about the area, things that Broomfield is targeting, uses. But ultimately, this pre-application stage is usually for the development team to learn more about our process and whether they want to continue to go forward for consideration. Next slide, please. If after that initial meeting with staff, the development team wants to move forward, they usually submit what's called a concept review. And this is where we are with the South Point development. Concept review is a very initial stage, and there's no decision made during concept. It's really intended to get additional feedback from the community, from council, and from advisory committees, so that the developer can know what the key issues are that they need to address moving forward, and they can determine whether or not they would like to move forward through the process. Concept review does not include engineered drawings. We don't get, for example, a traffic study. At a concept review, we don't get grading or drainage information or utility studies. We do provide the graphics that show the building placement, parking placement, and some general ideas about what the building could look like on our website through the Broomfield Voice to get additional input from the community. We provide referrals to adjacent jurisdictions and interested departments. And then we formalize the request at a study session with the City Council. And usually advisory committees, our land use review commissioners would attend and also share their feedback. And that's all done at a study session meeting. So there is public input that is gathered, can be submitted through the Broomfield Voice. You can submit comments at the public meeting, or you can submit comments by email or by written mail. Our email address is planning@broomfield.org. And we always recommend that you provide comments in whatever format is most comfortable for you. So the developer at the end of this process with concept review really doesn't get a decision. What they get is comments and items for them to consider whether to move forward. And you'll notice at no point in this process did I say that staff or City Council at this point could tell a developer they can't continue to request consideration. A developer or a property owner has the right to request consideration of their application, and we have the duty to review the application and consider it through the process that's outlined in our code. And so this concept review is that first initial formal step. We also require developers to host a neighborhood meeting. And in the case of South Point, they have completed that step. It's required to be completed before the next step. If we could see the next slide. If after a concept review and the neighborhood meeting, a developer decides that they would like to pursue development of a site in Broomfield, they need to submit the formal development plans. And this is when we will get some of the information like traffic studies, noise studies, if it's an industrial use. We'll get detailed information about the building and the grading and the drainage. And so that's all really critical information for us to determine whether the development is meeting our standards and specifications for engineering, whether it's meeting zoning code requirements and our comprehensive plan goals and priorities. Even if a plan does not meet the zoning, or if it doesn't even meet the comprehensive plan designation, a property owner still has the right to request consideration of a change to those documents. It doesn't mean that they are going to be approved, but it does mean that they have a right to request that consideration. And there are specific requirements for the application materials that developer or property owner would need to submit for that consideration. And so during this development review, it's probably around 4 to 6 months on average. They're going through a technical review with staff. And so this is the traffic engineer, North Metro Fire Rescue, engineering, other jurisdictions also review. Rocky Mountain Metro Airport reviews plans in this area, and they provide comments and the applicant must address it. Once those plans meet all of the technical requirements, we move on to the public hearing. We could have the next slide. So the public hearing, so usually there's 2, sometimes a smaller project under new regulations could only require 1, but most projects require 2 public hearings, one with the Land Use Review Commission and one with the City Council. So this is another opportunity for residents to learn more about the project, see where it's come after the concept review, see if they've been able to address the comments and concerns that, or anything that might have come up during the concept review. And we'd be able to share all of the information in terms of the application that's been submitted to staff. And all of this information is publicly available. We are updating the Broomfield Voice pages as projects move through this process. So the Land Use Review Commission on a project like South Point would be making a recommendation. And then the City Council considers the evidence that's submitted by the applicant and developer, the recommendation of the Land Use Review Commission, the technical analysis by staff, and all of the public testimony that's received during the public hearings. And they make a final decision regarding approval with conditions, or it can be for denial. Next slide, please. After the public hearing, there is still additional work.
Hey, Anna, can I ask that somebody give the, we got a question. Can you give the website for YouTube presentation? Just because people can't see your presentation. So.
Oh, sure. And, we will be happy to provide this if we can through the Homeowners Association, the slides for anyone who might have missed it. I don't know if, Abby,
Yeah, I can give that. So to get to that, you would just go to broomfield.org/live. And then once you're kicked there, you can just click on watch on YouTube. So I'll say it one more time, broomfield.org/live. And then you can click watch on YouTube to see the presentation.
Okay. Hey, sorry, Anna. It seemed like a good question.
It is a good question. Thank you. And so even after the final approval, if there's a final approval of a land use application, there are still technical drawings that need to be submitted and reviewed further by staff. And so these are final construction documents and final building plans. And then that is what we base our inspections off of. They have to match what was approved by the City Council, but there is additional detail that is provided in these final plans for the purpose of construction. We also maintain a financial surety for projects to ensure the completion of public improvements and common improvements that are associated with a project, and that financial surety remains in place. Broomfield doesn't have control over the pace of construction occurring. I know that's something that we have heard concerns about with the Skyestone community, is whether Broomfield staff can force the developer to work faster. And unfortunately, that we cannot, but we maintain that financial surety to ensure that there is completion of the project. And they have a financial incentive to complete those improvements so that they can have that financial surety released. And this also includes our building inspections and our inspections of the public improvements as well. And so that is generally our process. I'd say a project like the South Point development probably is considering, if they were to move forward in this location, probably a good year of a public process, including concept review, the development review, public hearings, and the construction document review is at least a year for them to be moving through this public process. But again, South Point is at the initial stage in the application. So we think it's great that the neighborhood is so engaged this early in the process, because concept review is really valuable. It provides us an opportunity to make changes to the plans, or to encourage development to make significant changes before they've moved on to construction documents, or even on to the engineering plans that are required as part of development review. It's an opportunity for the developer to hear what the community thinks before they make those investments into further consideration of their proposal. So it's great that there is that engagement. We really try to provide multiple opportunities for sharing your consideration. Again, broomfieldvoice.com is a great tool, as well as planning@broomfield.org to submit email comments on a proposal, and then also participation through the concept review, meeting, and public hearing. So there's lots of ways to make sure that your comments and concerns are known. And with that, I will conclude that brief presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that there might be on that as part of the Q&A session.
Let me go ahead and remind everybody that you need to press *3 if you want to ask a question. We do have one question in the queue. I'm not exactly sure of the format tonight, whether Roger's going to call them up or I am. Roger, you going to do
Mayor, why
that role?
don't you go ahead and call them up, and then you can intersperse additional comments by your team.
Okay. So we're gonna go ahead and start with questions, and then we do have questions that were submitted to us before that we'll work our way through. So let's go ahead and start with the questions. We've got Larry, and Larry, could you we prefer if you give us your full name, and then make your it's time for you to ask your 2 questions.
Okay, name is Larry Light, PE, professional licensed engineer for many years. He's also a New York City firefighter for many years. I'm very familiar with Chief Ramos. I have the utmost respect for him. The city of Broomfield has to be very proud to have a chief of that caliber running the fire department. And I've talked to him about this whole situation. I've also contacted the NFPA about this proposal. This proposal is as wrong as you can get. If you wanted to make a mistake, the biggest mistake you can make is building this complex. People have money in their houses. They have $500,000, $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 invested in their houses. You're allowing people to move into an apartment complex that they pay $1,200 a month. That's just not right. It's wrong. It devalues the property. You're going to see an increase in fires in those apartments by 300% to 400% compared to what a regular house would, because they don't have ownership in those houses. They don't give a damn about those houses. They burn their house out. They just pack their crap up and they move out. Okay. This is unacceptable. I have yet to find anybody that has any positive review of this. I've done some research on the VCC complexes in the Valley. I call them back because they used to be from Phoenix, but in the Denver area. And every one of them is just a house of horrors. A lot of crime, violence, and stuff. People want to walk around there at night. It's just an absolute disgrace. And I sure hope, and I beg every one of you, especially William for Ward 2, that he upholds his promise, what he made to me in my front stoop when he was trying to get elected. Okay, I trust people on their words because I worked for the NSA for many years, National Security Agency of the U.S. government, and hold a TS level clearance. Okay, when I say something, it's the truth, and you can take it to the bank. So that's all I have, and I just hope that everyone acts in good faith, all the residents, and the right thing is done by the city of Broomfield, and the right thing is done by the city, by the Skyestone development. That's it.
Yeah, and I don't know if there was a comment, at least on the deal about the response time, that we'll let Chief Ramos, respond to. I do want to make a comment that we had a question on the live deal. Abby, you want to speak a little bit about how to get down to the screen?
Absolutely. So again, it's broomfield.org. I think it's /live, just to be clear. And then if you just scroll down a little bit, I think maybe they were just looking at the top, just scroll down a little bit. You'll see a big picture of Anna's presentation. It'll say watch on YouTube. You just click right there.
Yeah, and I just tested that, so it's working. Chief, do you want to address response times?
Sure. Mayor, would you like me to go ahead with, there's a couple things that I think I really needed to discuss collectively with it that I was going to talk about later, which would be CAD project and new stations in the future. You want it all right now or just response times?
And I see the council members all nodding their head. Yes, we've all been talking about it. It's in the community. So let's go ahead and get that out there now.
Sure. Okay. So, we've had an opportunity to talk with residents at Skyestone for quite a while, and the district recognizes that in this furthest southmost west corner of our district, it's one of the hardest places for us to get to. We're challenged even further because our station that services that area is at the airport. On the north side of the airport, we have to travel around the airport to get down to that community. So thank you, Larry, for the question. I know Larry well, and yep, he's a very knowledgeable man. We have these challenges getting down there where it's taking us total time from the time the call is received to getting into that community, approximately 9 minutes. And so that's longer than we'd like. We have travel time standards where we'd like our travel time, which is about a little 6.5 minutes down there. That's the time we leave the house to the time we show up in an incident, 6.5 to 7 minutes down there. And it's still longer than we like. That should be under 5.5 minutes for us. And so we have plans to rectify that. And the first of those plans is really a CAD-to-CAD project. We've had an opportunity to talk about this project quite a bit at Skystone. So a lot of the residents are probably fairly familiar, but I think it's important for those that haven't heard about it that I discuss it a little bit. So Broomfield and North Metro Fire are collaborating with 3 other dispatch centers in the area to connect our dispatch centers together. That's so we can share resources in real time. Further, I guess, description is, who are those agencies? We will be connecting to Westminster, that's Westminster PD and Fire, Thornton PD and Fire, and then Adams County Communications Center, or ADCOM, which is a regional dispatch center that dispatches for 4 fire departments and 4 police departments. We developed a hub in the center that each dispatch center connects to, and that is referred to as the CAD-to-CAD hub. And CAD stands for Computer Aided Dispatch Center, and that's the brains of the operation in the dispatch center. That you put an address in, it selects the closest appropriate units, and then the dispatcher dispatches those units. Today, the closest station to Skystone is Westminster Station 5 off 100th Avenue. It's about 4 minutes from the entrance of Skystone. We have auto aid with that organization, and all of us that are part of this CAD-to-CAD project have auto aid agreements. And those agreements are really just us saying we're going to share resources because it's beneficial to our communities, particularly on those borders. It gives us both an opportunity when we're sharing resources to get more resources to an incident quicker, and it's a big benefit to the community. The hurdle today is that when you call 911 and you get Broomfield or Westminster and we need to share resources, the dispatcher has to pick up a phone, make a phone call. They have to see if the unit's available, and it takes time, up to 2 to 3 minutes to get that done. That's quite a delay in emergency response dispatching. This system will give all the information needed in each CAD system to identify its neighboring resources that are closest, and through that interface, dispatch it automatically. No contact to that dispatch center is required. So a very powerful tool, and it's going to reduce our response time by 2 to 3 minutes into Skystone. And it'll make a significant difference. And that would put Skystone on par for areas that are developing, meaning they haven't exceeded, by our definition, more than 1,000 people per square mile. And then we have urban areas, and we would be meeting that current standard that we have in other areas of our district. And then I guess moving forward, how do we plan for the growth that's happening in this community? I think one of the points that Larry brought up is a substantial amount of growth that happens when you develop a apartment complex. So for certain apartment complexes create one of the biggest risks we have, because a lot of people live there. Fires impact a lot of people, but some of that risk gets mitigated through having those buildings be fully sprinkled. And these buildings are planned to be fully sprinkled, so that's always good news to the fire department. But adding people adds calls, and it means that sooner than later, we'd like to have a station even closer. So the fire district is planning to build a station that is closer, and it probably within the next 2 to 5 year time frame. And so we're trying to identify property for that station. Now we've been working on it for a few years. Our biggest challenge is the big development to the north, Verve, that's just south of the airport, is well underway, but it's not in its final form. So even knowing where those roads will route, we need to know that to accurately place a station. And so we've been working with the developer on that project, and we've got, I think that's going to start moving fairly quickly. So we've been identifying land and property with the development, working with Rocky Mountain Airport, because it's important we stay very close to the Rocky Mountain Airport property. And in that collaboration, I think we're just waiting for some final pieces to fall into place that will be telling for us what's the perfect location for that next firehouse. I think that'll occur where we have enough information and the the final approval of the project, knowing where that street network is truly going to be, will happen probably, by the end of this year. But as development goes, that may or may not happen. I'm not sure. And so the district is planning for that. The short-term plan is really improve response times quite a bit through the CAD-to-CAD project, which is anticipated to be completed within this year. And then improving further 2 to 5 years out is the building of another station that will further improve our response times to that area.
Thank you, Chief. Let's go to David. David has a question on zoning for Anna. David. David, are you there?
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Ask your question.
Can you hear
David.
me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay. Well, it is for Anna, yes. It's kind of a series of questions. And first question I have for you, Anna, is when was the master plan for Broomfield that would cover this area completed? Can you give me a ballpark?
So our last comprehensive plan amendment was adopted in 2016. The residential expansion of Great Western Park was completed, I believe, around 2007, plus or minus a year or two. I think it was right around there that this area was planned for residential in the area that Taylor Morrison developed, and commercial for the two corners at Skyestone Parkway and Sims.
Okay, so that's what I was going to get next, is ask that other question. Is the zoning, what is the current zoning where the proposal is asking to be cited? The current zoning, what would that be?
Thank you for the question. Yes, the corners, the northwest and the southwest corner of Skyestone Parkway and Sims are currently commercial, both in the comprehensive plan. So that's the long range planning document that outlines Broomfield's vision for the city and county, as well as in the zoning documents. So it's also commercial designation in the Great Western Park planned unit development plan. And the developer is aware that this is not consistent with the underlying zoning. And as part of their request, as part of their application, they would have to request an amendment to the land use map of the comprehensive plan, and they'd have to request an amendment to the zoning, to the planned unit development district. So even though it's not consistent with those two documents, the applicant has a process that they can request consideration. Doesn't mean that it would be automatically approved. It has to be considered and go through a significant process and consideration before a final decision would be made. But that any property owner has that opportunity in Broomfield.
Okay, and so David's no longer on the line now. And if David wants to call back, because Larry's called back, and we will. Larry, you have a follow-up question, and it appears a comment. So go ahead, Larry.
Okay, thank you. David, appreciate your answer, Chief Ramos, but let's call it what it is, okay? I walk out of the bedroom I'm sitting in right now into the living room after this phone call is over, and I have a massive coronary, okay? And my wife flips out. She doesn't really know CPR. Maybe she doesn't want to know CPR, who knows? And I'm laying on the ground, and somehow she manages to call 911, okay? And you gave all these numbers, which look all, some good, some bad. A truck arriving at the entrance to Skystone Boulevard does not do me one damn good while I am laying on the ground going in VFib, soon to enter to a Sicily, which is a non-shockable waveform, which means I am dead. Dead, D-E-A-D. You don't get any deader than that. This community is made up of very old people. I apologize to everyone, but the ages are up there. There's 67, shouldn't say 60, I'm 66, 70, 80, and 90-year-old people in this community. They don't stand a chance of surviving a massive coronary in their house. You might as well just turn the rig around and send it back to headquarters, because it's absolutely useless to show up at 9 and 10 minutes. You use the standard as the front entrance to Skystone. It's another 2 to 2.5 minutes from the front entrance of Skystone till you get up to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
These are fire trucks are not cars. Okay, they don't go very fast. They have between 400 and 500 gallons of water in each truck, and each gallon weighs 8.5 pounds per gallon. The truck is slow. It accelerates slow. It deaccelerates slow. So, let's call what it is, okay? It's subpar fire protection per 1710 from the NFPA. You're way over the standards, and by adding this complex in there, it's just going to make things even worse with more traffic.
Okay.
End of discussion.
Yeah. Thank you, Larry. I'm not sure there was a question in there. But your point, your point's why the chief's on the line today. Let me mention again that we need to press *3 for those that are in the queue, and we have 73 people that are listening right now. If you want to ask a question, hit *3, and then a screener will talk to you and prepare the question, or prepare it for us. So hit *3 if you want to ask a question. I want to go to Jill Strauss, who wants to ask a question. Jill, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, I had prepared something for the residents the other night, but I would like to propose it to all of you. I have lived in this community for 34 years, actually 40 years. I worked for all of you for 34 years. I was part of the team that helped create this as a county when I was a district attorney. So I'm very familiar with the changing demographics here. And in a good light, the 2016 update to the comprehensive plan acknowledged the changing demographics. It acknowledged the desire for people to want to age in place, the priority for Broomfield to provide access to goods and services, transportation, and a stated goal of that comprehensive plan is to support neighborhood scale retail and to always consider environmental considerations. The definition by Broomfield in the comprehensive plan of the current mixed use requires there to be only 30% residential, with the remainder being retail or other light commercial. I don't know how many of you have gone over to the Five Parks area in Arvada. It's off of Indiana, but they have created such a mixed use area. It's got a beauty salon, it's got a coffee shop, it's got a dental office, an optician. The kind of things that the residents here were promised from Taylor Morrison, were expecting, were essentially promised by the city and county of Broomfield by zoning it in the way that you did. And I realized that we were just spoken to about the important follow-ups that would be done about drainage issues. But you have to understand that our residents really don't trust any of you right now. And that's being blunt. But Broomfield did not come back to our residences and did not do those follow-up inspections. And because of that, a significant number of roofs in this neighborhood are having to be redone. A considerable number of the sidewalks have fallen off. And we've got a construction defect lawsuit filed against Taylor Morrison. But part of that is also due to Broomfield's complicity. And now what we're presented with is the potential of an apartment complex. And for me, I want to know how you plan on handling that increase in population, that increase on the use of paths, and a complete and utter reversal of your own comprehensive plan that guarantees that the priorities will be that we can age in place, that we can walk to simple neighborhood shops. As you all know, there is no public transportation here, and there will not be in our lifetimes, not the lifetimes of the people who live here. The closest that we can get to is by park and ride, so we have to drive there. When these 80 and 90-year-olds stop driving, they're stuck. And so I want to know how you intend to upend the comprehensive plan and even consider authorization of something that is the antithesis of what you planned only 5 years ago.
Jill, I want to take a chance to answer that, and then I'll ask my fellow council members if they want to make a comment. Sharon, you've been doing this for 8 years, so we haven't changed the plan yet, and that the whole point of Anna was trying to point out that we go through a process. Right now, we're in a concept review process. That concept review, I think, is going to be presented on May 18th. And on May 18th, that, council will hear the concept review, as will our planning, or I guess it's our land use review commission, our reconstituted commission, and we will begin the process of considering whether we want to consider this plan. So the assumption that we have changed the zoning is not accurate. We haven't even heard what the proposal is. So I want to make that very clear to everybody. And city council has, when we hear land use decisions, we're in a quasi judicial position. We're not yet, but we will be once that application comes in. And we have an obligation as a city council to listen to the developer's proposal, listen to the neighborhood's concerns, listen to all the other issues, and then make our decisions. You'll see so you are encouraged. We will allow 90 minutes of comments on May 18th. I encourage you, community, to use those 90 minutes of comments. I do encourage you, speaking based on my experience, because I was mayor before, that if you could coordinate your, and not just tell us we shouldn't do something, but coordinate your concerns so they can be articulated in a fashion that's helpful to city council. We know your community doesn't want it, but it's okay to say that, but give us the reasons why you don't want it. Speak in public. It will be a public process. But that on May 18th, council will be the first time we've heard anything about it, other than what we've heard you mention, or brief conversations with the developer. So I want to make that point clear and encourage everybody in this call to participate on May 18th. Sharon or Wayne, do you want to say anything?
I do want to say too that there are some of us who may have heard the plan prior to the concept review, because we sit on different committees. So I have heard the plan at the Housing Advisory Committee meeting. And also want to put out there that in the comprehensive plan and in a lot of our discussions with how things are changing in economics, in whether or not there's how commercial is built. We're looking at our economic vitality program in Broomfield to see if what we laid out in the past is still valid today. And we're also looking at affordable housing that has been our #1 priority for the last 3 years. So we have an opportunity and an obligation to look at, all sides of the situation. We don't have our minds made up, and we look forward to hearing more of your concerns. And I would like for some of Ms. Strauss's questions regarding Broomfield's responsibility or complicity, because that's not my understanding. I think that the Broomfield staff put a lot of time and energy into this. It may not be the outcome, and there is liability. And I think we've been really careful with how we proceed. But I'd like to hear more from staff to see what their thoughts are, to lay out kind of what we have done and discussed with the whole Taylor Morrison debacle. And I know this community has been suffering from Taylor Morrison's absolute lack of integrity. And so those are, I'll stop there. And if William wanted to say anything.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Thank you, Sharon. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate, every developer and every property owner has a right to propose a plan, and we have an obligation to hear that plan and have a fair, concept review and process. As I've spoken to, Larry and many others in Skystone, I share Jill's concern about a lack of services in that area, whether it be response times, whether it be those retail services people need. So I'm listening. That's my top priority. is and always has been to ensure that Skystone has adequate services. Actually, the first meeting I had on City Council was to get you guys that drop box, the ballot drop box that you got in the 2020 election. So I've been thinking about it a lot. We've spent a lot of time on it. It's a top priority of mine. But again, this isn't this proposal hasn't hit City Council yet. I haven't even read the packet, and it's very, very early in the process. So just understand that these things are take a lot of time, and I have an obligation, and we as a body have an obligation to give it a fair time and a fair consideration. So that's my position on it, and I would love if Anna or staff could comment a little bit about the Taylor Morrison situation. We've spent a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to make the lives a little bit easier for folks impacted by what's been going on with Taylor Morrison. So I'm going to hand it over to her right now.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindstedt. Correct. We have done, trying to remember recently with the roofs, we were doing courtesy roof inspections for some of the items. I think quite a number of residents had taken us up on those courtesy roof inspections for some of the repairs that Taylor Morrison was doing throughout the community over the last 8 months. There were inspections that were completed when the homes were completed that I think we called it was a self-certification where the contractor certified the work. And we did look very closely at whether we could somehow intervene last summer, and determined that we weren't able to intervene with the homeowners and the roofing contractors and Taylor Morrison, and instead recommended that the homeowners work with Taylor Morrison to within their warranty and have any concerns addressed. I think that's when Taylor Morrison had the roof inspections completed, and then we offered the courtesy roofing permits for those who needed to have minor repairs done on their roof in order to have the city inspectors be able to check those repairs for them. And as I mentioned, I think a number of property owners did submit courtesy roof permits, or if they were significant permits that required a roofing permit, then the contractor obtained the necessary permit, and inspectors from Broomfield verified the work was completed within the code. And I'd ask, we have Katie Allen, Broomfield City and County Engineer, also on the line, and she can address some of the work that our staff has been doing on the drainage, and I heard sidewalk concerns as well.
Thank you, Anna. Yes, my name is Katie Allen. I'm the City and County Engineer. Last summer, at the last town hall, we heard a lot of concerns from residents about drainage. And most of the drainage concerns were really related to drainage on their lot. Sometimes how the water maybe is backing up due to landscaping, it can't get across the sidewalk, or some pumps were running more often than they wanted. And there was also some concerns about drainage in public tracks and private tracks. So some of the issues were macro, some were micro, some are on private property, and some are in public tracks where we had more control over implementing solutions or directing contractors to implement solutions. We did have any resident with any drainage concern talk to us. We went to every lot, some cases more than once, to at least look at it and give suggestions if that's all we could do. It was public property and there was an issue, or it was not in conformance with the site plan, we directed those changes and they were made. We were able to, through Taylor Morrison's request for an admin modification to change landscaping, we were able to put some requirements to reestablish some of the existing grades to improve drainage in those areas. And so we feel like we've been responsive. We know that not everybody's happy, but we've put a lot of energy in looking at all of the issues and affecting the changes we could. And that's what, I guess that's what I would say is an update to our efforts.
Okay, let's go ahead and go to the questions that are coming in from, from the phone. Steve, you have a question on zoning? Go ahead.
Yeah,
do. Yes, I do. My name is Steve. And I've got a couple of comments and then some follow-up questions. So first off, I think the council members need to understand a little bit about the perspective that the Skyestone residents are bringing to the table. And that perspective is one of which, since I've been living here, we have been bullied by Taylor Morrison to accept a number of different compromises in the neighborhood. And as Katie addressed and others have addressed regarding drainage, sidewalks, cements, sinking, landscaping issues, and so forth. So we come to you with a perspective of which we don't really believe that a lot that the city of Broomfield can do for us. And so we are on guard to make sure that we can be well represented by the elected members here. Secondly, what I've heard is in Anna's a brief recap is that the land use was zoned originally for commercial purposes. Before I moved to this neighborhood, I did extensive research in the use of land around us and made the move and the investment of our life savings into our retirement home into a location that was going to be more of a rural area, which I would not have to put up with high density housing, of which I moved from, and spend a significant amount of money to be able to make the transition and to move to this neighborhood. And it's a good neighborhood, despite some of its faults and the bullying by Taylor Morrison. But it's a good neighborhood, and there are good neighbors here. But I just would ask the council to take seriously into consideration the question of, if you lived in this neighborhood and you spend a significant amount of your income and your savings to move here, how would you feel to have a high density, lower income, different demographics, housing project to be built at the entrance of your neighborhood? Not only would you probably feel that you were being violated because you had a complete understanding that the zoning laws prohibited that, but also you would probably feel that you would be a little bit afraid, if you would, for not only the value of your homes, but also the value of your lives. I'm not suggesting in any form or fashion that the people moving into this neighborhood are going to be into the housing project would be certainly threatening to us, but there are certainly fire issues, there are police access issues, there are, despite what the developer may or may not believe, there will be people walking in and out of our neighborhoods, coming in and out towards our pool and our use and our lodge use and so forth. So those are, I think, some of the bigger ideas that we are concerned with. From Taylor Morrison selling this project for financial purposes only, and to any developer that may be able to maximize the real estate return that they can get on the project. And I just think that to what Katie said earlier, or excuse me, what Sharon said earlier, is that understand that there is a need for affordable housing, but affordable housing by the city should be pre-planned, not randomly placed in the center or in the outskirts of an existing neighborhood. And so those are my concerns, and probably shared by a number of other Skyestone residents who I spoke with over the course of the last month or so.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and for your comments, and we hear you. Let me go to Gerald. Gerald, you're next.
Here. Hello.
Yeah,
everybody there.
Yeah, Gerald, you're. Go ahead.
Great, thank you. As far as I can see, this project has only one thing going for it, and that's it provides for affordable housing. In almost every other area, it's the wrong project and the wrong location. Recently, the city had a had a development up in Arista for affordable housing. That's on Wadsworth. It's got good access to transit. You got much better ability to get back and forth and get throughout the community. We don't have that access here. And I think I didn't hear Joellen Strauss's comments, but given RTD's financial situation, particularly as a result of COVID, it's going to be years before they think about expanding routes as opposed to getting their existing system back into shape. So I know the developers indicated at the neighborhood meeting they thought that they would be able to get transit here, but that seems pretty unlikely. In addition, this project's not compatible with the neighborhood. The Broomfield Municipal Code and Section 1738 talks about compatibility with a neighborhood, and there's not a single way that this project is compatible with the neighborhood. The density is totally out of character with the single-family character of the neighborhood. The heights of the buildings are considerably higher than adjacent development, and since Broomfield allowed Taylor Morrison to add 6 to 13 feet of fill in the southern part of the site, the visual effect on the properties, particularly to the south of us, is going to be that of a 4-story building. Now, I know they moved, when they adjusted their plan, they moved those buildings back a little bit so they wouldn't have to seek a variance, but it is still going to be a significant visual impact. And also, the developer at the neighborhood meeting was asked why they opted to pick this site. And they opted for the site because it was available and it was affordable. But there was never any consideration of whether it was compatible with the neighborhood. And that, I think, is the real, at the concept level, that is the real issue that we have to discuss is neighborhood compatibility. And when you have more than 215 comments on this project from this neighborhood, indicating not a single one of them is positive, it is just not compatible with the neighborhood. And probably at the concept level, I'll expand on these comments. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Gerald. Kat, you're next.
Good evening, Congressmen and women, council members. Thank you very much for having this call with us. I'm one of those California transplants that helped drive up the home values in Colorado, and I'm thrilled to be here. And I can tell you that among my old neighborhoods, we never would have had an opportunity to have a direct conversation with the folks that represent us. So thank you for having this meeting. I wanted to speak specifically on the Housing for Older Persons Act that was enabled by Congress and signed into law by President Clinton in 1999. Gerald's comments were spot on. The social contract that has been developed among all the Skyestone residents was established when we purchased our homes. We understood that our neighborhood would be among like-minded folks who had an ability to, live, our retirement years in a way that we expected to be consistent among our neighbors. And I agree with Gerald's comments that while we endorse and understand the social need and the public policy around affordable housing, the lot that's been selected by the developers of South Point simply is inconsistent with what Skystone requires. So my question to the City Council is, when Congress passes an act like HOPA that enables communities like Skystone to be developed, how is that measured against applications like South Point's?
So Nancy or Anna, do you want to take that? I'm not familiar with that law.
Thank you, Mayor. We'd be happy to look into the specifics of this project as it relates to that particular rule. We had not believed that it met the threshold, but we can certainly look more into that as we prepare for the concept review meeting. As part of the concept review, we will be preparing a very detailed staff memorandum, and that'll be available in advance of the meeting. So we can include some of the information when we prepare that moving forward.
Okay, so we'll get back on that question. So thank you, Travis. You're next.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. My name's Travis LaBerge, and thank you so much for all your time this evening. I really appreciate it. Between yesterday and today, I sent each of the council members a brief history of the pad height, so the height of the land on the 2 land parcels in question. In 2012, as Taylor Morrison was beginning excavation, A large amount of fill was dumped on these lots, raising the pad heights by up to 12 feet in certain areas. In 2012, Anna Burton-Zetti and I traded emails about the historic pad height versus what became the new and now existing pad height. And we've discussed this many times in person and specifically over email in the many years since then. My question has to do with the process for making sure that the agreed upon building height relative to the historic grade versus the existing grade. In 2018, a different developer came in and told us in their required neighborhood meeting that the building height didn't have to be addressed because of the zoning change request. In other words, if the zoning was changed, that they would not have to they would not have to adhere to the pad height, to the building height restrictions that are in the current PUD. This is similar to what happened a few weeks ago in VCC's April 1st required meeting. They told us, quote, "The city has informed us that we are not gonna be required to ask for a building height variance," end quote. And I sent all the council members a link to the recorded Zoom meeting with the specific time that happened, so you could go and listen to that quote for yourselves. Now, I understand from this meeting and from other emails with Anna that this is not the case. Neither the council nor the planning department have approved anything yet. I get that. But please understand that when people of authority make a strong statement that the city has informed them that they don't need to ask for a building height variance, most regular folks like me believe that to be the case. Most people don't ask, they just take that word for gospel. I think this is intimidation by people who do this for a living. It's not fair to regular people like us to have to figure out what is factual and what is still pending. A few minutes ago, Ms. Strauss talked about a mixed use idea. I actually spoke with councilperson Devin Schaff yesterday about this and think it's a potentially great idea, but the building height and pad height, so the height of the land versus the agreed upon building height restrictions still have to be addressed. So my question is this: what do we do to get this addressed in a way that prevents this issue from happening? Taylor Morrison can leave the dirt there as far as I'm concerned. It's not hurting anyone, as long as people don't think that this is the agreed upon starting point for building height moving forward. So how do we make sure that people don't come in and tell us that this is where they can start? And if they do succeed in a zoning change at some point, that the building height versus pad height, the historic grade, is actually taken into consideration? Thank you.
That's a good question. Anna?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree. It is a very good question. And unfortunately, I have a feeling, and I know Travis and I have talked a number of times about the pad height, which I appreciate that you have brought it up with each of the projects that comes through, and to let the community know as we meet in that pre-application stage. The pad height is something that we mention to applicants right up front so that they're aware of the expectation and the requirement that they consider the historic grade of the property. What you were hearing in terms of the developer's belief that they don't have to ask for a variance, I think that they meant, I hope that they meant that they were going to intend to apply for a PUD amendment and ask for a change to that requirement. Unfortunately, just like the fact that the zoning in place is commercial and the developer can request a change, a developer could request a change to any of the development requirements that are stated in the plan. What is so important in our process is that residents and the staff, the council, all of those involved in the process continue to hold firm on those standards that we think are critical for our community and uphold our vision for the future of Broomfield. So continuing to include that in your emails to planning@broomfield.org, on Broomfield Voice, and through the public process is the critical key there for ensuring that a requirement remains in place.
Yeah, so let me stop for a minute. I'm going to take Sue's question, which segues off of Anna's last comments there, and then I wanted to give a chance to after responding to Sue to let David speak about Rocky Mountain Airport because we've gotten several questions on it, and then we'll go back to the questions that are on the queue here. But we are going to stop at 7:30, and I just want to make sure everybody understood that. And so, Sharon, did you want to say something?
I just wanted to also see if someone could address I think Jill Strauss had mentioned if anyone could talk about like losing some of the businesses at Flatirons and how that relates to, needing more commercial and what do commercial developers look for when they are wanting to build commercial. Yeah, if they could touch on that, that would be great.
Yeah, and once again, I don't notice anybody from economic vitality. The question coming up, so I don't know if somebody could take an attempt at that, but that's a great question.
Or we
Sharon.
could get back to her. And I want to make sure that all of the questions also get back to everybody on this call somehow, right? In the whole community. So
we will make absolutely certain that every question, is responded to one way or the other. So let me go in the order that I just talked about. And then we should talk at some point in time about the economic vitality aspect of it and Jill's question about them all. And well, let's go to Sue, because Sue had a question on the process, and I think that's a really important question. Sue?
Yes, thank you. I had two quick questions. One is, how often do the Skystone community have to give public comments? I know in May is the next meeting. I think there might be a zoning meeting coming up. And second of all, if we wanted to be efficient and really have our act together, do you have a recommendation as to what's the best format? Yeah. Is having a petition with things spelled out better than having people talk randomly at meetings? I know you've been through this before. Do you have a recommendation on how we as a community can do a good job of expressing our concerns?
Yeah, this has been assigned to Anna, but I think I'm going to take the first attempt at it and then let Sharon and others speak as well. Yes, to the extent that you can coordinate your comments, it's the absolute best way to do it. We're going to limit the comments at the concept review to 90 minutes. So there needs to be a certain level of coordination within the neighborhood. There are several avenues, and I don't know if Sharon, you want to talk about it, that you can get comments to City Council. Whether it be through email or the Broomfield Voice. And I will assure you that the council reads those comments, and often a well-written email that is not a standard email copied off somebody else is more effective for me than it might be, if you get a standard email, because you tend to see that as standard. Sharon, this is your ward, and William, what other ways are you?
Well, I'm thinking of the Via VAR presentation, and Sue. I'm wondering if you email me or William, I can send you the link to that. So you're basically telling a story and not all repeating the same thing. It's just more organized and well thought out. I'd love for you to see how they did it, and I'm going to try to find that footage. I'll look for it, and because I think you have a lot to offer, and you want to make sure your message is clear. So I'd like to be able to support you in that. So if you have our emails, do you have our emails, Sue? Maybe she already hung up.
Yeah, and we talked about this a couple of weeks ago at our coordination meeting. Whether it be through the homeowner association, whether Jill or the other members of the board, people want to yield time. If they want to, everybody wants, like the homeowners association board, or two people that speak on behalf of several people. I would entertain all those ideas, because I think the fact that the more concise but coordinated those comments are, the more helpful. And I wasn't there at the Via VAR presentation. I presume that was all part of what occurred at that presentation. So my comment back to Jill in particular, that's on the call here, that Golly and I will be working with staff to coordinate comments. Sharon will include you and William to make absolutely certain that we find a way that is the most effective way for you to get your comments to City Council, to the Land Use Review Commission. So Sharon, I guess set that contact. Don't hesitate to send me, send me an email. We'll make this a point of, at the next couple of coordination meetings we have. I'm sure Abby's got it noted already, that we want to find a way to make sure that your group feels you've been heard. That's Guylene and my promise. So I will I guess I'm going to go to David right now, talking about Rocky Mountain Airport. David, did you want to go ahead and give us an update on there's quite a bit going on at Rocky Mountain Airport.
Yeah, that sounds great, Mayor. Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. I'm David Allen. I'm the Assistant City and County Manager here at Broomfield. We did get several comments written in regarding activities at Rocky Mountain Airport. And rather than answering them individually, I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the themes that were related to that. First and foremost is concerns with noise coming from the airport. Also questions about proposed expansion of the airport, both in terms of additional facilities as well as possible expansion of commercial services, rerouting of Sims Street, and then just overall progress on how the roundtable is moving forward. So the first roundtable meeting was held earlier this year in January, and since that time there have been 4 meetings that have been held, and a lot of the meetings up until this point have really been focusing on getting background information. One thing I do want to share is at the last meeting there was an aviation consultant who was retained by Louisville and Superior, and they had presented the findings that they had for work they had done for those 2 communities. And the thing that was really significant there was that that the FAA would not look at any changes to flight paths or flight patterns unless there was a community roundtable that would provide recommendations. And that's one of the biggest challenges we have at that airport, is that the ground operations are managed by the airport itself. However, the flight paths are managed by and regulated by the Federal Aviation Administration. So looking ahead, kind of next steps for the roundtable will be getting a presentation from the general aviation groups that are currently at the airport, and that would include the flight schools where a lot of the noise complaints are originating from. And then in addition to that, the roundtable members will be working with the airport staff to complete what's called a Part 150 airport noise compatibility study. And that's basically a baseline study to help establish what types of noises are happening out there, where the source of the noise is, how loud it is, how frequent, those types of things. And then that study will then become the basis for developing recommendations for potentially changing either flight paths, operations, frequency, and those types of things. And so the group itself is again, made up of 7 community representatives, including one from Broomfield. And again, we'll be looking to pursue that study, and we'll be able to share the findings with the community as that process moves forward.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
And once again, I'm going to go to Sheila next, who has a question on bike lanes. But I did want to say then I'm going to go to Abby Yellman to respond to the questions that we'd gotten sent into us previously, to the extent that we can. Also recommend that people do star 3 if there's people that, because we still have 60 participants, if you do want to ask a specific question. Sheila, go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, thanks so much for holding this. It's really helpful to hear. My question is about Sims. It appears that the area near the airport was widened to add a bike lane, but right about where I think the Broomfield city limits start, the road narrows again. And as I'm sure you all know, you take your life in your hands if you try to ride a bike along that area. So I'm just wondering if you're looking into widening that portion to add bike lanes on both sides.
Katie?
Thank you for that question. Sim Street widening, I believe, I'm looking at Anna, I believe we would make a responsibility of a developer. And if that was the case, bike lanes would be added in accordance with our standards and specifications at that time. It is not in our 5-year capital plan, however.
Okay. So go ahead, Anna, you wanted to respond as well?
Yeah, if you wouldn't mind, Mayor, I was just going to add that as part of our site development plan review process, as each of the vacant parcels along Sims come in, we will be reviewing the project internally, but also in conjunction with the City of Westminster, since that is a road shared between our two jurisdictions. But we can definitely look at the bike lane connectivity as part of that process.
Okay. And to our council, I think it's fair to say that bike lanes are important to us. So we share your request. I'd like to see bike lanes everywhere. So Abby,
Can I just add one more thing, Mr. Mayor? Just
yes, of
that
course.
Sarah Grant did the pedestrian and bike overlay over all of Broomfield. So maybe she would have some insights to add to that.
Okay.
That would be great. I'd like to hear them.
Good comment. I'm going to go ahead and go to Elizabeth before we go to, because she has a specific comment on Rocky Mountain Airport, since that was the subject. Elizabeth?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, so the question was, I did just listen to David Allen respond to one part of the question about the community noise roundtable, but I would be interested in knowing really three things, I think. Stan, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, but he's the council member in Ward 1. I'm Jazerski. I'm confused about why he's on the community noise roundtable representing Broomfield when Ward 2 and where we are is impacted by that. So I'd appreciate just some insight into that. The other is what realistic.
Elizabeth, you're cutting out.
They, their plans are fueled by economic development, which.
Elizabeth, you're cutting out. We may need you to recall back in and press *3 because we're only.
And the ownership of the airport has changed.
Yeah, you're cutting out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, I'm sorry. Unless the ownership of the airport has changed to like cooperative, for example, where the counties who are impacted by it, it's Boulder County, the city of Superior, Louisville, it's Broomfield County and Jefferson County. I mean, realistically, we can sit and listen, and the noise roundtable can roundtable for infinity, and nothing is going to happen if you don't have any power to get anything done. So I'm interested in knowing the prospect of the management and you guys would, you and Broomfield would support that, or, I mean, I know that's not an easy solution, but realistically, to have accomplished by being a part of the roundtable when you have really no authority to make any changes. And I understand all the FAA controls the air, and I've become an expert about this. Thanks.
Yeah, those good. I'll make one comment and let Sharon and William answer the question on who represents. But the one thing I guess I will say is that obviously any solution is going to be a federal government solution, and we do have the attention of Congressman DeGoose, who is very concerned about the project. So I mean, I agree with you. Our ability to change the airport's not great. But we could, I guess part of the goal could be political pressure. Sharon, did you or Wayne want to respond back to the representation?
Sure, I'll be happy to take a stab. And if I miss anything, William, please feel free to chime in. I think it's a time and logistic. Both William and I work full time and we're on council. And the time that it was available, we were both at work or at another board and commission, and council member Jazerski had the time to be on there, and I believe council member Schaff is the alternate, and he is also, and we do get updates. So it was nothing personal. They weren't trying to slight Ward 2 in any way. So William, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I'll chime in. Yeah, just so everybody knows, the way the structure works here in Broomfield, council members are part-time. We make about $800 a month, and it's almost like a volunteer position. I mean, we put a whole lot more hours than are required into these jobs, and we have about 45, maybe 47. I don't remember how many boards and commissions that we all serve on and split up, but it's a ton. I sit on, I think, 6, and Sharon sits on many, and it's just very hard to make work with a full-time schedule sometimes for all the things. But one thing to note is, complaints about the airport come from all across town. So representation on that board doesn't necessarily, everybody in town's affected by it. And another thing is, we communicate pretty regularly about what we do on these boards and commissions. So we get updates on what's going on with the roundtable regularly from Councilmember Jezierski and Councilmember Schaaf. So that's how it works. Imperfect or not, we do our absolute best to serve on everything we can. But there are 10 of us, and we split up those boards as equitably as we can.
So David, have you been attending those board meetings, or has somebody from staff?
Yes, I have, Mayor. And so I've monitored the activities and provide any support that the council members need.
Yeah, I was going to say, so we have staff support, and I'll just chime in that I think the airport noise is a real issue that council recognizes, and nobody's trying to ignore it. It's and Stan had, Councilmember Jezierski had volunteered, so I'm pretty sure that the entire city council is concerned about the noise that's coming particularly from the flight schools. It's a problem. So, Abby, I'm going to turn it over for you to you if you want to go ahead and run through some answers to some of the questions, and we'll get written answers to the extent maybe we ought to get written answers to all the questions, regardless whether they've been answered tonight or not. But go ahead.
All right, so I'm going to kind of mix it up a little bit to make sure we cover some of the things that haven't been covered. Okay. So thank you all that have submitted questions earlier. It did help staff kind of prepare for tonight. Again, we want to make sure that we answer everything that we can. So the question that I wanted to cover is actually for Chief Krieger. What statistical research with police data has been completed to ensure crime does not rise in areas you have previously built in Colorado? I'm assuming in Broomfield as well. State the research and where it's published. So Chief, can you speak to that question a little bit?
I'll certainly try. When you look at how crime occurs and what are the factors that contribute to crime, it really comes down to 3 factors, and that is the offender, the victim, and motivation and opportunity. So there's no factor that I've ever seen published or that says do these steps and crime will go away. Do these steps and crime will not increase. But there are strategies that work very, very well to at least reduce or discourage crime in particular areas. And some things are in the purview of the police, extra police patrols, better locks, alarm systems on homes, those kinds of things. And other are social issues, right? So, like with offenders, a lot of times, access to education, access to good housing, things that can help them do other things in their lives that are more positive in the community is an aspect of that. Mental health is another one, drug addiction. There's so many factors. And we work on all of those with our HHS and the council, who's been very good about helping give additional resources to try and affect offenders. Keep in mind, though, that about 70% of the people that commit crime in Broomfield don't live in Broomfield and really have no connection to Broomfield. So we have to work through that. We look at victim and victimology. So, people leaving doors unlocked, cars unlocked, leaving valuables in cars, all those go to motivation and opportunity, which we're trying to both stop or at least eliminate. And so there's just so many factors that go with crime. As we've seen coming out of the post-pandemic, all around Colorado and throughout the nation, crime rates have increased, and there's a lot of reasons for that. Hopefully we'll start to see that taper off here in the near future, but so far it continues to increase, especially in things like auto theft, breaking into cars, burglaries. we've been affected more with property crimes in our increase, not so much in violent crime, whereas other cities across this nation have been impacted by violent crime much more so than we have. So it's a very complicated thing. We look at data all the time. We have meetings with the community. I know we've had quite a few meetings with your homeowners association, your community, encouraging people to not be victims or help us keep them from being victims. A lot of education is really one of the best keys, whether it be locking your doors, not being becoming a victim of identity theft or fraud and those kinds of things, which impact your community especially big. But there's just so many factors. I wish there was a way, and I'd love to see it if there was a way to say, do this and crime will not occur anymore, because I'll be the hero of Broomfield and probably the entire country.
Hey, Chief, can I follow up with a question for you? Sorry, Ms. Yellman. Is there any data out there that kind of states like if in the same, like, do people who commit the crime, do they live in the same community as those that they crime against? And, do you see people living in like first filing, causing havoc in like second filing, or, first filing to Broadlands or something like that? Are the crimes coming from the same city, or are they coming from different places?
Sure, thank you for the question. So it really depends on the crime type. In a lot of urban areas, you'll see a high correlation, especially lower income areas of certain cities. You'll see a high correlation between crime victims and the criminals. They usually know and live near each other. In Broomfield, what we find is that it's a very wealthy or relatively wealthy community. And so that opportunity, the motivation to come here and commit crime is high because, quite honestly, it pays pretty well. So what we see is not so much a lot of crime occurring between wards in the city, although some does occur, certainly, or even people that live very close, but rather we see it coming from other parts of the metro area for theft and stuff like that, Aurora, Denver, and a lot of those. And we see a lot of people that commit a lot of crimes. So they may hit 10 or 15 people in Arvada, then come to Broomfield, then to Westy, and then so they move around quite a bit. And those complicate investigations because we'll coordinate them so that we're filing all the cases at once. So it's really a little bit crime specific and depends on the community a little bit. But in Broomfield, we see about 70% of our offenders don't live in Broomfield. They're coming here and they're attracted by the opportunity, which is what we really try and educate people. Don't give them the opportunity. And the motivation is the value of the homes, the value of the cars, the value of the property that people have here to commit crime. And Jill may have a statement too, as a former district attorney.
Yeah, Chief, I just have to echo what you said. We know that crimes against persons, crimes of violence, typically are between people that they know. And I have repeatedly emailed my fellow neighbors to remind them to lock their car doors, stop leaving the garage door openers in them, stop leaving important papers in them, use their garages to the best of their ability. Several of the former police officers that I worked with as well live in the hood, and we've all said the same thing. So please stop leaving your cars unlocked with anything in them.
Thank you, Jill. Abby?
All right, so I'm going to turn this back over to Katie. We had a couple questions about sidewalks and sidewalk repair. Have we done inspections regarding the sidewalks out in Skystone? Katie, can you talk to the sidewalk issue a little bit?
Sure, thanks, Abby. So sidewalks are generally considered part of the roadway, and we inspect them during construction, and then when construction is done, we accept them, we inspect them for what we call acceptance into warranty, and that's the point where the city takes over maintenance of those sidewalks. And then 2 years later, our warranty period expires, and we inspect one more time to address any workmanship problems that were really warranty related. And I think the current status, we actually have a list of all of the acceptance statuses for Skystone for Great Western Park by filing, and we can share that with whomever. I think the vast majority has been accepted, and there is one area that is in the process of coming out of warranty, and we have done those inspections, and my understanding is Taylor Morrison has done the replacements. And I should add that our inspectors use pretty objective criteria. They have a list, and we can share that too, what they're looking for and what they mark for replacement at the end of warranty.
Hi, Katie. This is David Allen again. There was similar comments related to some of the status of the landscaping as well as bench improvements. Would those types of things also be included on that warranty acceptance list?
So it depends if it's, some of the questions were related to private property landscaping. And if that's the case, then no, that is not included because that is not accepted by Broomfield for maintenance. But any of the other areas, the landscaping areas, that would be on the list, yes.
All right, I'm going to throw it over to Anna. Anna, you were going to talk a little bit about trails.
Thanks, Abby. Yes, we did receive a few questions in advance about the trails in Skystone, whether they were private trails, whether they're publicly maintained or privately maintained. And I think Katie just talked a little bit about if they're public trails and they're going through that acceptance and warranty periods. We do have a list of that as well. But in terms of, to address some of the questions that we got, the trails in Great Western Park area, including Skystone, do have public access easements. Some of them are on public property, so property that is owned by Broomfield. Some of them are on property that is owned by the homeowners association, or it could be on property even owned by a metro district. But it is, they all have public access easements on them. All of the facilities in Great Western Park, in Skystone, are privately maintained. So that could be a metro district or it can be a homeowners association. But the landscaping and most of the trails throughout the community, the park at the entrance, those are all privately maintained. And that's consistent with a lot of what we see in most residential developments is, unless it is a community park level facility, so something we have some parks up in the northern area of Broomfield that are 2 to 10 acres in size. Those would be publicly maintained. They attract from a much wider area, but facilities that are geared towards the neighborhood are usually maintained either by the Metro District or by the homeowners association, but they remain open to the public by those access easements.
Anna, can you produce any written contracts that demonstrate the responsibility of the homeowners association for safety, maintenance, and upkeep and replacement of any broken equipment in the parks? We've been unable to determine that there are any written contracts that require us to do any of that.
That's a great question. So there's not a specific contract. What there is a site development plan that has specific improvements listed. If, for example, sometimes a homeowners association as a development ages will decide, this particular amenity isn't working for our residents or it was difficult to maintain. And in those cases, we see an amendment to the site development plan and the homeowners association works through the planning division to say, these are some changes that we'd like to make so that the area is easier to maintain and a better fit for our community going forward. But it is the maintenance otherwise of the site development plan improvements. So the benches, the trash receptacles, the trails as they were approved in that plan, that is the obligation and the intent that would remain unless it was changed.
And specifically the playground.
Yes, including the playground. So the playground equipment is specific there. So if it were to come into disrepair and need to be replaced, the site development plan compliance requires that it be replaced. But if you are believing that there is something else or a different model that may be better fit that you'd like to consider, we'd be happy to talk to the homeowners association regarding that. Significant changes, we wouldn't be able to approve administratively. It may require a public hearing, but minor changes we are able to handle administratively if it's consistent with the level of quality that was originally approved.
And these agreements and all the original approved were done with Taylor Morrison, not with the citizen-run board. These are all the original agreements that you're talking about that were done with Taylor Morrison.
That's correct. These would have been in place before the first homeowners are residing in the community. We do keep those on file, and I believe we have a website for the Great Western community if anyone is interested in looking at the site plans.
Thank you.
Okay, I want to start wrapping up, and I'm going to acknowledge Grace's question, but I'm going to go ahead. We don't have our economic vitality people on, and I think I think we owe a response, and we need to give that part of our presentation on May 18th as to the recruitment for mixed use, because obviously, council, if we could get retail and commercial in that area, you know, it's not like we're not trying to do that. So we need to give a response, and probably Jeff Romine's probably the best one to give that response. Maybe we can give some type of written response, but also certainly address it on May 18th. I want to leave with a comment that, and I'll go back to Sharon talking about the Via Vara, you know, the Via Vara response, that I really do want to work with, you know, with the homeowners association and the citizens and Sharon and William to make sure that you know, that we give the community the time they need to give their arguments that are, because you know that in most effective way for council and perhaps Nancy may have to be involved in that as well. But I hear that that's a priority. And Sharon, you said you were going to share. You'll share with me, I'm sure, too, the Via Vara presentation. But let's promise everyone we're going to have that conversation, and there'll be follow up with. I presume at this point that would be the homeowners association would be the best people to follow up with. Other people will know. Sharon or William, did you want to say anything at the end here?
I just want to thank everybody for their time. We hear you. It seems to me like the critical issue for me is the response time. And Chief, I appreciate your being here and letting us know. I still feel like it's still a bit of an issue, but you know, we have a lot to think about, and we appreciate your time and energy, everybody. And thank you, staff, for being here. And without naming everybody, but thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I just wanted to thank the residents for calling in and being so engaged. We get all of your emails and we read all your emails. I have a backlog of emails to reply to from residents, but we get it, we hear you, and as things move forward with this proposal, we'll be in communication. So just thank you for spending your Wednesday night here on this town hall.
And Mayor Pro Tem, I'll offer you a chance if you want to say any parting words here. You're on mute.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. And I really do appreciate you all joining us tonight to share your concerns. There's a lot of moving pieces with this project and a lot of things to take into consideration. So your feedback is very appreciated, and stay engaged with us. Yep. And we'll work through this together. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I want to thank everybody for their sometimes a passion, and I understand completely, but very thoughtful comments tonight. And we'll try to find a way to get all these conveyed formally to us in a way that's meaningful to everybody. And so with that, I'll just say good night, everybody. Thank you, staff, once again for being with us tonight and your professionalism. Same, you know, Chief Ramos, thank you for being here as well. So anyway, thank you, everybody, and good night.